everybody, as the late Keith Jackson would say. Welcome back to the 411, where we keep you up to speed on what's going on with fifth scale on-road racing in the United States. Well, we had a busy 2 months from August to October. We had the KO Propo, the U.S. Nationals, and the Halloween Spookytacular hosted by the Rams. We had some great racing, some breakthrough podiums, some domination runs, and some hard-fought battles, so let's get to it. The 2020 KO! This was the first attempt at a full race in this COVID era, and as racers, we couldn't have asked for anything better. Thanks to Brian Thomas for including us in the program as usual, and the Good Wines for excellent track prep, both for COVID and racing. And race director extraordinaire Mike Braun for keeping the program running as smooth as that asphalt we run on. Joel Johnson was one of the special guests in the race, running a Good Wine prepared Spec 5 car, but by the end of lap 1, he wasn't exactly where he wanted to be, and ended up spending a lot of the race trying to play catch up. By end of lap 1, it was Paul Smith who ended up being your leader, and by lap 12, Cody Kilber would end up making his way into third place, and that's pretty much where that stayed until race end. Craig Kaplan wouldn't have his usual qualifying runs for this event and ended up qualified 5th. But by the end of lap 1, he had moved up into 3rd, and lap 2, he was in the 2nd, and eventually would end up in the 1st position. Ken Gerberding, having one of the best outings he's had in a major race, would take over 2nd place on lap 34, and Victor Garcia would move up from 7th into 3rd on the same lap. Your TQ, Satoshi Takasako, wouldn't have as good of a run as he would have liked to, and ended up having to retire the car on lap 6. So your Spec 5 podium was Paul Smith, 2nd place was Gary Keyes, and in 3rd, Cody Kilber. For STC, it was Craig Kaplan, Ken Gerberding, and Victor Garcia in 3rd. Then we have September rolling around, and it's time for the 5th scale Nats. We hadn't had a race with that title in a while, so it kind of brought out all the major players in the U.S. Even some of the A-scalers crossed over for this event. We had reps from the Rams, the Texas 5, the Miami crew, and even some drivers from Mexico and Venezuela. We had some awesome racing, and it was nice to have the track in shape for the 5th scales, which meant a lot of rubber down and a lot of great traction. And with great traction comes traction rolls. You had to be on your setup game for this one, as the track was changing almost every round. And by the time main day rolls around, we were ready for a great main event. Satoshi backed up his TQ from the KO, putting down a 31 lapper, but he had a lot of company this time. Kyle Goodwine would be the only other driver to break into the 31s, but all of the rest of the drivers in the A main ran 30 laps to make it into the show. For Spec 5, we had Bill Jarrett running a Gerberding prepared BMW and grabbing pole. Jason Markley would be the surprise in F1, and Simon Cowell TQ in STC Sportsman over Markel Osborne, who's had one of his better runs when coming out to SCS. Chris Markley would get the Spec 5 Sportsman pole, edging out Derek Butterfield. So for the mains, we had the STC main was a race-long battle between Satoshi and Kyle, with Kyle getting the better Satoshi later in the event. The battle for 3rd would come down almost to the wire between David Blakeney and Craig Kaplan, with David getting the better of Craig on that one. So your podiums for the U.S. Nats were Kyle Goodwine backing up his win from last year, Satoshi Takasako, and David Blakeney in 3rd. For F1, Mr. John One and Done Burnett, I'll get to that one later, Rich Raybach in 2nd, and Chuck Clendenin. In STC Sportsman, you had Chuck Clendenin getting the win on that one over James Stewart, and Simon Cowell in 3rd. For Spec 5, Gary Keys, Bill Jarrett, and Paul Smith. And for the Spec 5 Sportsman, Derek Butterfield did edge out Chris Markley by 7 seconds for that win, and 3rd place was John Keck. Then it's time for October. time for the Rams Spookytacular. And this race kind of came together real quick as the Rams were just starting to get back into racing and wanted to have a 2-day kind of casual event. So Saturday was kind of casual. Spent most of the day practicing, getting set up tests and so forth. But Sunday was all business. The race had a good turnout with a number of drivers coming up from SoCal to compete. Even Kaplan's bad qual runs followed him up north. It was good to catch up with some folks we hadn't seen in a while, especially the Fosquettes, and talking to Bryn was a blast. Good to see you, brother. Tim Jarris always runs a good show up there and keeps... I love the way he does marshalling at this location. So you're not really getting burned out on marshalling, and it works. You can't work at all tracks, but for that track, it works. And by the time it was all said and done, your sportsman podium was Tim Jarris and Al Jarris. In Supersport, it was Steve Jarris, Chuck Clendenin, and Hao Ching Lao. In F1, Fernando Jose making up for his bad run in the Nats, Mr. Podium, Hao Ching Lao in second, and Chuck Clendenin in third. For STC, John Burnett, with an appropriate paint scheme, I might add, of the Silver Bullet, followed by Arnold Mercado and Craig Kaplan. So, as always, I like to give some shout-outs for drivers. For this one, I'm going to give out two, because it's been a little while since the last episode. So, the first one is going to go to a driver. He wasn't always that consistent. He always seemed to have some issues. Definitely had some bad luck. And all of this was going on before the pandemic hit. But now that we've gotten racing again, he seems to have turned everything around. He's got more consistent. And for the last couple of months, brought in a fair amount of hardware. So my first shout out, I'd like to give that one to Chuck Clendenin. Good job, bro. And my second one is going to go to who I referred to earlier as Mr. One and Done, John Burnett. So John basically inherited an F1 car, brought it down for the Nats, and competed. So not only did he compete, he won the darn thing over some very heavily favored people. That car looked so good to some, it didn't make it on the hauler going back up north. So he didn't stop there. At the Spookytacular, he had to defend against his local faves, against Tony Vega, Arnold Mercado, and the crew that was coming up from SoCal. So in his aptly named Silver Bullet, once the green flag dropped, he was gone. You did not see him. And he ended up winning the event. So, good shout out to you, John. Way to go. So, that's going to do it for this episode. There are a few more races to be held at SCS. We want to try to get a big turnout for the Toys for Kids. And if you've got an F1 sitting on the shelf, dust that puppy off because the class is back. And come on out and run with us. So, until then, we'll see you on the track.